podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Here, we love talking about everything Batman. The BatmanUniverse.net has news, original content, and reviews about Batman comics, movies, TV shows, video games, and more. Check out the BatmanUniverse.net and join our Discord server to start chatting with fellow fans. We can't wait to talk to you guys. Also, visit our Patreon page and join our other awesome supporters. But enough of this nonsense. On with the show.
Gotham City, like any other large metropolis, abounds in girls of all shapes and sizes. Debutantes, nurses, stenographers, and librarians.
Gotham City Library, Miss Gordon speaking.
Lopez hair removal. This is Jose.
Holy transformation. 1 minute, plain Barbara Gordon, librarian and Commissioner Gordon's daughter. And the next minute, something new has been added. Batgirl, modeled after her idol, Batman.
Holy apparition! No, Boy Wonder, I'm Batgirl. You are no longer alone, Caped Crusaders.
It took me 3 years to track down the Jade Gato, and 3 more to figure out how to steal it.
Funny, it only took me 10 minutes to figure out how to snatch it back. No matter how you do it, crime doesn't pay, girls.
Salvete, nomen est Stella, et hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 247 for June, MMXXIV. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out MileHighComics.com. Well, this is the final episode of Batgirl the Oracle in this particular apartment in this particular city. After I record this, I will pack up my equipment for it to be moved. And then the next time, you see the background, which will probably be, I've been thinking about how I'm going to organize that, but it's going to look vastly different. Right now, it's probably good that this is the last one because I'm starting to feel claustrophobic. Like even where I'm sitting, there are boxes on either side of me. I'm excited with a healthy dose of nervousness as well. And I think that's all I really have for the intro. I mean, Professor Cohen Coca just was going on and talking and what is it, palavering for hours at a time. So in the previous episodes, I really think I just need to cut it down. And as I said in the previous episode, it is just going to be one issue because I just need to get it recorded. And next week, I'm heading up to see that rotten man, Harry, and also my sometimes beloved, but the guy that I'm trying to get exiled Donovan Morgan Grant. So we'll see what happens. I guess if I can remember, in July, you'll just hear all about the shenanigans that go on in Cape Cod. But I'm just doing one comic review this time. And of course, I'll do, my literature recommendations, etc. And I guess first off, really just have some listener emails, all of which are coming from the YouTube episodes.
Mail time. Mail time. Mail time. The mail's here. Come on. Here's the mail. It never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
From the YouTube episode 246, part 1, Donovan, that guy himself, says, IDK, would I live for more? Carolyn's terrific analysis on issues of storytelling and gender politics, or her straight woman reactions to Stella's podcast mania, and then gives a sort of rock on emoji there. I don't know what he's talking about. If anything, I'm probably the most really understated, no affect podcast host. Really, everything that comes out of my mouth is straightforward and normal and serious. And you should believe everything that I say. So I'm not really sure what he's talking about in regards to the straight man, because that doesn't make me the comedian, right? But we're just here doing what we can. And yeah, we're always going to have naysayers just trying to drum up trouble. So we can just move on from that comment. I will say in regards to part 1, because if you remember, Professor Carolyn Coca said something very cancel worthy and said that she was all about incest as a relationship and as a trope between brothers and sisters. Now, sure, I like step siblings, but they're not blood related. So at least I'm, a tier above her in morality. But I realized as I've been watching the OG Star Wars trilogy that this is most likely the, the inception of that particular kink, because the siblings, Luke and Leia, we weren't sure, will they, won't they? And then I guess she just really didn't move on to Leia and Han. And so now we really understand where her love of Flowers in the Attic comes from. So, but we here on Batgirl Oracle do not kink shame. So you are welcome to enjoy that. On part 2, we have from Hornacek. I do believe I suggested Stella Smut being made a new segment in the comments of episode 244. So my deepest apologies. I just could not remember who said it. I couldn't remember if it was coming from required reading because I had been talking with someone else about smut. So my sincere apologies. And in honor of you and to show how genuine my apology is, I've renamed that particular segment, which you won't find out yet. But just rest assured, I will make it up to you. And then Horset comes back and says, I concur with Carolyn's recommendation for Doom Patrol series. But be warned, it was made for HBO Max, so it is R-rated, and it is a hard R. Lots of violence, nudity, and extreme language. Robot Man, voiced by Brendan Fraser, says the F word almost every other word in his dialogue. It's a wild show. So good to have that warning because I wasn't aware. I don't always go on, I think, Max or HBO and assume that something's going to be wild or, super edgy. But it's always good to have warnings to prepare myself so I'm not thrown back, especially because, like, superhero shows, I don't necessarily expect it. I don't watch The Boys because I don't think that I would feel comfortable watching that with things that I've heard about it. But I do watch Invincible, so that would certainly be an example of just the violence on that show. I will say that probably the most hardcore show that I watch, and I don't know that I could necessarily say that I enjoy, but I appreciate, is Euphoria. So I'll just say that what you're saying there is like, well, maybe it's like Euphoria, and then I can properly prepare myself emotionally and mentally. And that's it for comments. Remember, you can always comment on the YouTube video because I get pinged back in my email, and I don't think I've missed one. Can comment on the website, which I don't know that I've ever gotten a comment there. Maybe I have. And then email at batgirltoracle@gmail.com. But we are moving on. Look at how swift this is. Isn't this beautiful? What a beautiful day, which will only make sense if you've seen the new Apes film, which I do recommend actually. So, actually, speaking of apes, the new, the Rise, Dawn, War, and then Kingdom. Harry and I have been talking about this, and the big question is, why do people love these films so much? So that'll be my discussion question for listeners if you have an idea. And he liked it. He was like comparing, he's like, well, we got Marvel films, we got Star Wars, and then we have the Apes film. And I'm like, well, that's really interesting that you've lumped all three of those together because I don't necessarily see that. But I do find that they are popular. And I think certainly the original ones, there was a tie to racism, kind of like Tarzan and things like that. But I think we've shifted. I wonder if it's a fascination with our origin, if you are more of a like a Darwinist or evolutionist, then perhaps like seeing this connection. Yeah, I don't know. So I'm interested. Why do you think they are so popular? But we are moving on. We're doing Birds of Prey, number 10. World Without End, Part 2, writer Kelly Thompson, art, one of my favorites, Robbie Rodriguez and Gavin Guidry, and colorist Jordi Belair. And from the publisher synopsis, it's Barda's world now, and we're all just living in it. As the birds search for Barbara inside the mysterious portal that keeps changing and also trying to kill them, separating enemy from ally is getting harder than ever and more important than ever. Okay, so first of all, now this cover makes sense. I had seen it publicized. I was like, oh, wow, what's going on here with Barda in the foreground and kind of Stepford-esque background there. And it does make sense once we're in there. And I love this cover. I think it's great. This is, of course, the artist that we loved at the very beginning, Leonardo Romero, and I'm glad that he's still on in some capacity. And the art internally is great. I do miss Romero, but I'm loving the art internally as well. So I want to jump right to the big point. I actually didn't make any notes on this, with the exception of some Greek mythology notes. And the one note I had, if you've been a longtime listener of this show, you will know exactly what note I'm going to be talking about. In the future, this is a character that I will, Sela is what she's going by, Seleno. I'll talk about that in a bit. I'm just skipping everything to get to the meat because this is what we want to talk about. And then I'm going to go through everything else. But this is what she says. In the future, the Birds of Prey, specifically Barbara Gordon, kill our mother, Lonnie Lockhart, the villain also known as the Velvet Tiger. Now, when I was reading this, I didn't have a sub assignment. So I was in my little work cubby reading it. And I think, in an opposite way, my jaw did not open, it closed. And I kind of flopped my phone down because I was reading on Kindle on there, and then looked askance in a disappointing way. And then immediately went over to X and accosted Martin Gray and said that he had some explaining to do because that guy is all about Velvet Tiger. Of all the people that we could have brought in, why did it have to be her? I feel like I'm plagued by Velvet Tiger. I remember when she popped up, originally, way back when, and that was just a nuts storyline. But then, she repeatedly was popping up to plague me for some reason because Barbara Kiesel had used her. And then she appeared again in Burnside. And I remember asking the creative team, like, why Velvet Tiger? And they're like, why not? She's fabulous. And then to have Velvet Tiger be at the epicenter of all of this is just nuts. So while I have a personal grievance against Velvet Tiger, I will say that having it connect to some vintage character like that is really interesting, and that it's like a tangential, almost like a 1 degree separated, since it's all like a vengeance now. You killed my mother, and so now we've got this vengeance plot that is spanning time and wipes out a whole family basically in order to get to Barbara Gordon. So while I'm not too hot on Velvet Tiger being that person, the overall plotting is really intriguing. So that was my only note that I had there because that's how affected I was by this. But on the plus side, just like Jordan B. Garfinkel said when we were talking about Joker's Last Laugh, that the worst crime is to have a boring comic. You want reactions, emotional reactions from what you're writing. And well, Kelly Thompson, you got that from me. So yeah, if we go back, I guess, to the beginning. I like how there's a new costume shift. I really liked the other costumes. And now there's an understanding of why this world is shifting. Because at first it's like, what's going on? And you find out that the person who is first through the portal, it sort of is reskinning, I think is the term that was used by a couple characters in this. I know Barbara says that in the prison. Reskinning depending on that person. So Barbara was the one, Barda was the one through it first here, and I guess Barbara would have been the first, well, which makes sense with the clock tower. Yeah, and that's super sad though. Now that we think back to 9 and how dark it was, now I have slight disagreements with that art, just because my argument about Barbara Gordon and her place and role in the Bat family is always that she brings the light very much like Stephanie Brown and is like a happy spot. So to now think about the coloring, and even though arguably those costumes were awesome, the darkness within that is a bit confusing, which also now that this does make sense. Thank you, Kelly Thompson, for having everything make sense. Where we come to find out Maya, that person says like, wow, you can tell that Barbara is like sick in the head or whatever. Like she's really messed up inside because that was her creation since she was the first one through the portal. But I think, just argue or disagree that it would look like that. But that's just my own understanding of who, Barbara Gordon is. But it makes sense that there's a clock tower there and everything. So Barda's is described as kind of a 1950s aesthetic. If I can find this, Vixen, who doesn't like her particular outfit, but she says, not gonna lie, thought it would be much more fire and brimstone, apocalypse, nightmare, scape. And then Barda says that Barda contains multitudes. And yeah, lovely mid-century details. My mind has excellent taste as always. Yeah, which is interesting coming from Barda. So it would actually be, I guess, through this, if we think about this might be too deep and almost a bit meta, but I wonder if we can kind of peek inside Thompson's mind to see her understanding and her what she envisions each of these characters represent through the representation that these characters create of their world. So even though I see Barbara as the light and the hope in the Bat family, maybe that's not what Thompson thinks. And so that kind of shines through there. So that's psychologically very interesting. So the birds are rescued by this person, Selah for short. And I will admit, like, this issue, I think, was like emotionally all over the place for me, because at first it felt like I just was like not jiving with it. I wasn't sure what was going on. This character pops up. She's very like flighty and aloof. Wasn't sure, all these like weird things are happening that don't seem very connected. And then I think you get this interaction, like Dinah keeps chasing after Seleno. Seleno's like, okay, guys, you're on your own now. I'm leaving, like at least 3 times. And then they have this heart to heart. And then I felt like we really reached a good point with this issue. And once we find out about everything and like the connections are happening, and then we have this fight, I felt like the comic really went up from there. And like I said, the whole Velvet Tiger in my jaw sealing shut, so I would prevent it from falling to the floor. But yeah, definitely like emotionally all over the place. So I will say that reading this background, which is really like 3 pages, one of them being a splash, so we could say 4 pages of these septuplets, and how Maya came to be, who is this creature that is going after Barbara Gordon that we saw pretend to be Barbara Gordon and then is a creature in the beginning of this one, is really dark. It's really dark. It's really tragic, which is, of course, contrasted by these beautiful pink and this soft palette. Basically, Maya, the eldest of these 7, and all of the girls kind of come together and live in this like this pocket dimension that was created by Maya. And Maya is able to absorb, basically, like each of the sisters has a particular power. And in killing her sister, any of the sisters, Maya is able to basically absorb that particular power. And so Maya's becoming all powerful. And Seleno killed, well, yes, a mercy killing of one of her sisters, really the final one. So now it's just Maya and Seleno, in order to prevent Maya from becoming invulnerable. And then through this journey, time travel, like she was able to get some of the stuff from Maps Mizuguchi. So that's where Maps comes into play, just some of that technology. Oh yeah, with Maps she was able to control the green, and then there's another sister that was able to control the red. So that was the next thing. And so you're just learning about this. First of all, these poor children are suffering from the Disney mom disease, where the mom is the one that gets killed. But that's tragic. They all have each other, and then just the vengeance gets out of control. But man alive, the fact that your plot for vengeance is so intense that you kill all of your sisters is just nuts. And just like looking at that splash page and all the murder that's happening is really, and it's almost worse because you don't necessarily see every detail that's happening. So it's like the unknown that definitely makes it worse. So the cool thing about this, amidst all this tragedy, is that Thompson is pulling from mythology as well as constellations. So these 7 sisters are based off of these nymphs, the Pleiades. It's often considered like a rainy constellation. So if you're translating they're going to appear in the Greek, but if you're translating Virgil's Aeneid, you're going to find them. I feel like I've encountered them with almost everything that I've translated, and just because it'd be a way to give a direction or a location. So I'm pretty sure that Caesar uses it in De Bello Gallico. I'm pretty sure that Ovid uses it. So it's just something that you would, culturally, if you were at that time, you would be used to this, and just something that you talk about. I in my research and like looking at these 7 sisters, because really I only associated them with their constellations, but it kind of gives me an idea for next year in teaching, that a constellation project and doing mythology that way could be really cool. So I have like all these new ideas that I want to do with my students next year. And I just need to remember that. But because I was just looking at this, I'm like, wow, I had no idea. Because I'm thinking about, their parentage and what they're associated with. Each of these sisters many of them have super important offspring. And it's just like, wow, I only associated them with a constellation and with rain. So the Pleiades' parents were the Titan Atlas and the Oceanid Pleione, who was born on Mount Selene. There are also other sisters associated with them. And trying to think here, another person you might know that's related is the nymph Calypso, who of course is someone who had relations with Odysseus, but with whom does Odysseus not have relations? And depending on obviously tellings and who is actually talking about the Hesperides, they might be related as half sisters, and then the Hesperides are nymphs of the morning star. So of the sisters, many and this is just typical, isn't it? Many of the male Olympian gods had some affairs with them, which when I read the word affairs, I think to myself, that sounds consensual. It is most likely, it's like unlikely that it was consensual. One can only hope. So Maya was the eldest, and she is actually mother of Hermes by Zeus or Jupiter. In that case, I'm just gonna like 90% assume that that was a non-consensual act, just because I know. Electra is the mother of Dardanus, who is big for the Trojans. He's one of their kind of forefathers. And Jason, wait, hold on. Sorry, Yasion by again Jupiter. So then we have Taigete, mother of Lacedaemon, also by Jupiter or Zeus. Alcyone. Let's see if I know any of these people. I do not. Poseidon had relations with her, and apparently she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 offspring. We have Seleno, whose name is also the Dark One, and that's because of the etymology of that name. And do I know any of those people? Looks like she had 1, 2, 3, 4 children by Poseidon, aka Neptune. Sterope looks like she had relations with Ares or Mars, and Merope, the youngest. Oh, in some contexts, she married Sisyphus. Isn't that interesting? And becoming mortal faded away. It's very interesting. Oh, Glaucus, one of those guys. Yes, so she had sons with Sisyphus, which if she married and became mortal, then hopefully it was a happy time. So just some background on the Pleiades. So I appreciate this is obviously not the first time that Thompson has brought in myths. Just thinking about it now, because obviously Megara is the other person that I was thinking about as being one of the Furies, would be interesting, but there's been no connect. At least in here, there was really no conversation between Sin and Selah here. But you'd think that there might be a connection. However, the end of this is big because the first person through the portal is in fact Sin. And it ends with Sin saying, "What do you think, Sin? Will it be my memories or yours that it takes?" Should be interesting. But to have two characters, really three, if we think about Maya as well, connecting via mythology, you wonder if there will be a bigger conversation about that. But yeah, just I guess classicist food for thought. So Barda does become ill. We find out that there's just like a madness or a sickness that the world as well as Maya kind of puts into that. And then there's everyone's fighting. And I think just one of my favorite moments, honestly, is that Cass is the one to, I mean, people are generally like running away and like, this is not going to be good. But Cass stands up to her and says, "You are Barda free, born of the free on Apocalypse. She who first led the female Furies, she who wields the Megarod as if it is but a child's toy. This infection is nothing. It is a scratch," and actually puts her hand on her face. And then Barda dismisses her, crashes through a wall, and then basically muscles out that infection. And then it brings back around to Barda breaking minds as being free because she was able to free that. And then Cass is the one to pull her back up. So it's just another moment in the Barda Cassandra ship that I have created, a non-erotic ship, I think. Just an amazing buddy cop moment. I think Kelly Thompson, please, could you pitch a limited series with these two? But it's just, it's really beautiful that Cassandra was the one to talk to her and stand up to her and reach out to her in a pacifist manner, which is not typical Cassandra. Also, Cassandra was speaking a lot there, which, may I remind you, she doesn't do too much of, is just perfect and I think really beautiful. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Selah running off constantly, but there's still like a hero in her, is what she says, like, or it's just one of her quote unquote flaws of trying to help people. And then she was going to run away and ends up turning back and helping them out. So I guess she's with us for the long haul. I wonder if she's not going to make it to the bitter end, but it is anyone's guess. So it all comes down to, I should say, I was about to skip over. We have Barbara. Barbara is separated. It could be one of those things where people who, and I cannot remember, I can envision it in my mind, but off the top of my head, I cannot recall a good example where if people go through a time portal mere seconds before another person, that they just might be like in a different spot, somewhere completely different. I feel like Ben 10 did this somehow, where Ben and like Gwen and Kevin were separated. Ages might be completely different because it was like 1 second equals 20 years, something like that. So it seems like because Barbara went through several seconds, because remember Dinah had her weepy time right before, that she is just reskinning in a different way and at different times. And she's in a prison now. She had made some sort of contraption, but it shifted. And she's realizing, well, if you make something, you pull it with you, but it's just going to look differently. Shockingly, she uses, which I do disagree with the author, using this particular tool. So if you built a gun, for example, when the world changed, you'd still have a gun. It would just look different. And of all the inanimate objects that you could choose, I just feel like a gun. Do you remember that Suicide Squad issue? How she hates guns with a dying passion. I just feel like that's not what she would use. If she ends up having a gun, I will be very concerned because that's just, again, not Barbara Gordon given what has happened to her and her just the anathema towards guns. But we will see. I'm not really sure what that tool was that she was making, and I don't know that it was mentioned. Yeah, it just says what I was building, so very vague. I don't know if it's a lockpick or not. But yeah, I mean, I like her costume that she currently has. That domino mask is like huge and doesn't really hide anything. So good thing there aren't any civvies around looking for Barbara Gordon. But we'll see. And then, of course, the big question is, in regards to Velvet Tiger, are we going to see what happened? Is it one of those situations where, and that's all coming, it's not coming from Maya. So it's coming from a different source that we could trust a little bit more. But in what way was she killed? Was this like accidental manslaughter? Or was it like intentional? Like, I need to be done with you. You're not going to get any more grace. I can't give you any more chances on that Batman. Bang, bang. Yeah, I'm intrigued about that. And the fact that it's Barbara Gordon and the fact that it's Velvet Tiger. I just can't believe it. Can't believe she's come back. Oh, okay. I think that's all I have to say about this. I mean, there are obviously a lot of cool moments I could talk about, but really the big notes, yeah, we find out why the world and the costumes look that way. We now find out who the villain is, as well as why the villain is going after Barbara Gordon and how the villain has the powers that she does. And we have an ally. So I would say compared to 9, more is happening. I don't know if it's just my mind, but I think that this is a 5-part storyline. So I imagine if Barbara, Barda, Sin will be next. We have Vixen, Cassandra, and no, that's too many. I don't know. I was going to say maybe 1 world per person, but I suppose not. I could be completely wrong. I don't know. I just have in my mind that there are 5 issues in this arc. But I think, so I would say like maybe this is probably better overall than the previous issue. I'd say between maybe an 8.5 and a 9, maybe leaning towards a 9 out of 10. Velvet Tigers. Oh dear, oh dear. But yeah, we shall see what happens. Okay, so we are going to finish up this episode. And first, we will have my new segment, which is called Stella's Dungeon of Smut. And it is brought to you by Hornacek's Fried Calamari Popsicle Sticks. You can get them in your grocer's freezer. Okay, so let me pull up my Goodreads. I will say that I found a step sibling romance where the step siblings went to UVA. And so because I am a double who, I had to read that. It was okay. I don't think I would recommend it. Luckily, they're ex-step siblings at the end because there's a divorce and there's there's all this other stuff that goes on. 4 stars and above for the smut. I don't want you to waste your time. Did I leave? I think I finished with the Dixon Rule. I think I just did that. Okay. Love You Never by Jennifer Susevich. This was ex-step siblings. I don't think I knew that at the time, but it just worked into my that trope. But I did enjoy it, and they were almost going to be step siblings again, but they remained ex-step siblings, and that is hockey, I think. It's been a while since I've read that. Yes. And I'm trying to think of what the major conflict was. Yeah, no, I mean, I gave it a 4 star, so I would say that. And then I tried a couple other Jennifer Susevich because she has a universe in the way that Elle Kennedy does. Campus Heartthrob, which was about a football player in this and a soccer player, so I did really actually enjoy that. I recommend that. And these are hopping around because Love You Never was like the second book of the series, and I tried, I think, was it the first one? And I was like, It usually happens where when I read the first, whichever one I read first, the ones on either side of it, I just don't like as much. And I think that's it. I'm in the midst of other smuts. One is taking entirely too long. I started on May 3rd. I just get distracted with other ones. And I'm in the middle of an MMF one, which I don't think I would give 4 anyways. I'm nearly done with that. I'll probably finish it after this. And I have too many on my TBR. It's gotten pretty bad. Okay, so that's it. Again, go to your grocer's freezer and get some of Hornacek's fried calamari popsicle sticks. Okay, let's go to literature recommendations. So it seems like I'm a legit person. Genderqueer by Maya Kobabe. And you can listen to that on July's episode of Required Reading with Tom and Stella, where I lead that one. I really enjoyed it. And I first really delving into gender identity and what that struggle may look like for one person being non-binary and what that means to that one person, because we can't allow Maya to be a monolith in this. And then understanding or getting to know the Spivak pronouns air. That was the first for me. So really informative. Of course, it's one of the most challenged books in America, has been since it's been dropped, since it's arrived. But I think what's really ironic is that when people do that, then other people want to know what all the fuss is about, and then they get it. And so it's like almost reverse psychology, and it gets more popular. And Tom even said he wondered what was going on, why is this being challenged so often? And that's why he read it. So I found that amusing. Funny story by Emily Henry. Finally, we're getting back to it. I really did not like Happy Place. I didn't like, but to a lesser extent didn't like People We Meet on Vacation. I was getting tired of the emotional manipulation of characters that were going on in these Emily Henrys, and I just wanted to go back to Beach Read. I really liked Funny Story. If you liked Beach Read, and I think even though there's emotional manipulation in there by the sister, if you liked Book Lovers, then you will like Funny Story. So I think give it a shot, especially if you don't like Happy Place or People. And then disappointingly, I don't even want to recommend it. I'm just going to say, because I think don't waste your time. The Girl in the Eagle's Talons by Karen Smirnoff and translated by Sarah Death. This is the 7th Lisbeth Salander, which technically it's called the Millennium series. And the trilogy, obviously, read the trilogy. The second trilogy was really strong. This one, I don't think Smirnoff had a handle or a grasp on Lisbeth's character. The way Lisbeth was talking, I'm like, this is a completely different person. This is not. And then writing, I've major critiques. And the trouble is when you are reading something that's not in its original language, I don't know who is actually to blame, because if you read Virgil in Latin, that's different than if you're reading Stella translating Virgil. But I will say that this author, which I just think is bad writing, was changing like midstream. Like one paragraph would be from the perspective, and they were all third person, but like omniscient, like is so close. I'm sure there's a name, almost like first person of one character, and then the next paragraph it would shift. And it was really hard I had to like reread and double back, like, okay, this was through the vantage point of blank. Now it's this person. And I would just say that that's bad writing. So I don't recommend it. I've gotten all of the books, and I would trust, if these people are given the rights to the estate, I guess, as it were, that they would be trusted by the family. And I know Carolyn Coca is going to hate this, but when Margaret Mitchell's estate gives permission for someone to write, for example, Rhett Butler's people, then you better believe like there's a lot to that. And so if someone's getting permission to continue the original author's intent, like that should have been checked. I don't know how. I've just read Lisbeth for so long. I just don't know how anyone else could be like, oh yeah, that sounds just like her. It really does not. She was probably the nicest I've ever seen her, and that is not Lisbeth Salander. So yeah, I'm just disappointed because I'd like to see it to the end, and there's probably going to be 2 more, and I don't know if I'll give it a shot or not. So I only say I recommend not recommending it. So that's why I'm saying it. Well, that's it for me. Remember, you can send any questions or comments to backrolltheoracle@gmail.com. Like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter @backrolltheoracle. Subscribe to the show on YouTube for an uncut version. And follow Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well. And remember to support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Backroll the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast. And until next time, I will be in a new zip code with a new background. Crazy. It actually might just be a white wall depending on what I get to. But I've got some posters that you all have not seen. I've got at least one more Batgirl poster, and then that one I talked about with Carolyn, which I'm trying to figure out. I'd love to make that like a centerpiece somewhere. So we'll see. I've been holding on to that for years. But yeah, until then, fly on, Babs lovers.
Just plain Barbara Gordon, masquerading for a lark as she rides into the night on her special Batgirl cycle. Who knows? Is the dynamic duo destined to become the triumphant trio? Only time will tell us more about this dazzling daredoll.
I love a happy ending, don't you?